God. Okay, so God has been kind. We have this. So we'll start with the verse number 41st. But let me put it in the context because we have had, obviously, the whole week work days. You had a gap. So just put it in the context. We were having a discussion on how the Atma is different from both Sthula Sharira and Shukshma Sharira. Now we're going to discuss how it is also different from the Karana Sharira. The Sthula Sharira is about what you experience in the Jagrata Avastha. One of the deciding criterion is to how can you decide that this is the Sthula Sharira? Wherever there is a Vishaya Indriya Sanyoga, that is the filter that decides whether you are waking or you're in a dream or in a deep sleep state. Only during your waking state, all our sense organs are connecting with some external objects. The phone may be ringing, but once we fall asleep, we enter into the dream state, we may not listen to it. The object is there, the sense organ is there, there may not be any connection. That is this Sthula Sharira, the gross physical body, and it is made out of the Panchakrita Pancha Mahabhuta. Panchakrita word is the critical thing because when these Mahabhutas become Panchakrita, they do become visible, perceptible. Otherwise, they're imperceptible, they are too subtle, they are Shukshma Bhutas. Now, Buddhi, Manas, Pancha Jnanendriyas, Pancha Karmendriyas, Pancha Pranas, all they have come out of what? The Sukshma Bhutas. And that is why they are part of the Sukshma Sarira. So Pancha Jnanendriyas, Pancha Karmendriyas and Pancha Pranas together, they constitute the Pranamaya Kosha. And the Manas plus Pancha Jnanendriyas, they constitute the Manomaya Kosha. Buddhi plus the 5 Jnanendriyas, they constitute the Vijnanamaya Kosha. And these Pranamaya, Manomaya and Vijnanamaya together, they constitute what is called Shukshma Sarira. Now we were able to prove that during the dream state, Atma is there. But the Sthula Sarira is not there. That is the Anvaya Vetireka. Anvaya means it's still, there is an element of belongingness. You can see that it is there. Okay, Anavritti and Vyavritti, concomitance and non-committance, if I can put it in those words. If it is also there, it's also Anavritta during the self is there, otherwise who is dreaming? So dreams, your buddhi is also there. Even your emotional senses, emotional self is also very much there in dream state. How do you not get angry or sad? You get angry or sad only because the Manomaya Kosha is active there. Vijnanamaya Kosha is also active, not so much in the dream state. One, and even the Sukshma Sarira is there, but the Sthula Sarira is not there. That is Vetireka. That means non-presence. It doesn't belong there. However, Sukshma Sarira is there. Now, in that context, when we try to do the Anvaya Vetireka, there are some curious students in the classroom who come up with a lot of challenging questions. Out of curiosity, sometimes in order to prove a point to the professor that, look here, you are just telling us wrong things. Let's imagine that one of these students, let's imagine that he is a Charvak follower, or he's maybe he's somebody who doesn't accept this Vedantic theory. So we'll come and ask you these challenging questions. Why are you talking about Sukshma Sarira when we were doing Panchakosha Viveka? Because you said that you can have Atma Jnana when you do proper Panchakosha Viveka, and you are being able to establish that Atma is different from the Panchakoshas. That was the Prakarana. That was the context in which we started this discussion. All of a sudden, you are saying Sukshma Sarira is different from Atma. How does that solve our problem? You have not been able to prove as yet that Manomaya Kosha and Atma are different. You have not yet proved that the Vijnanamaya Kosha is different from Atma, or Pranamaya Kosha is different from Atma. Where is your argument? You only talk about Sukshma Sarira. The answer there was, the answer is very simple. That look here, when you are talking about Sukshma Sarira, we are already talking about these three kosas. They are part of the Sukshma Sarira. We have explained to you earlier. Tad Viveka Viviktasyu Koshaha Prana Manodhyaha. So the Pranamaya Kosha, Manamaya Kosha, and the Vijnanamaya Kosha, they together represent the Sukshma Sarira. But if you do analysis, you can see the difference. We have already explained to you. Tehi Tatra Gunavasta Veda Matrat Prithak Guna and Avastha Vedat. They are work of the pranamaya koshas are of the rajasika aspect of the Sukshma Bhutas, whereas the manomaya kosha and the vijnanamaya kosha, they are out of the sattvic angsha of these panchabhutas. Then avastha bheda is also there. One is sankalpa vikalpatmagam manaha, is all the time thinking. There is the word in Vedanta called vimarsha here, but vimarsha in the Kashmiri Saivism is different. We are not, it's self-awareness. We are not going there. Wholly confusing language. They don't speak to each other too much, except in seminar halls. Our languages are different, isn't it? One word which you use to express something in one of the regional languages, you use the same word and it means something else. Same in philosophy. So Bimarsha here is about doubt, about brooding over something with the alternative possibilities. That is what the mind does, the manas. Whereas Buddhi is Nishchayatmika, deliberative. He's saying you can do the distinctions, not a problem. We have finished that. So that doubt has been cleared. Now we have to now establish how even Atma is beyond the Susupti Avastha. Interestingly, in Susupti Avastha, we feel very good, isn't it? We get a great sleep. There is an experience of ananda. And why we return to deep sleep again and again in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And there is some bit of a discussion on it with a lot of examples. There is this Akshaiga, like a bird, it flies the whole day. Imagine that its legs are tied with a very thin rope. The bird will fly around the whole day. You have given it a certain distance it can fly. And then it gets tired in the evening. It comes back, gets in the nest on its own, and it sleeps. You want to relax. You want to recharge your system. So we all the time enter into the deep sleep. And if you do not get very good sleep, the next day is a problem. We cannot perform well. Our memory is not very good. Our sharpness is missing. We are in stress. Sleep is very critical. Good sleep is very critical for a healthy day following these 4-5 hours of sleep. Idanim anandamaya koshatvena vivakshitesya karana sarirasya vivechana upayam aha. This deep sleep thing, anandamaya kosha, it's called the karana sarira. Somebody might ask you, why do you call it karana sarira? You know, it's like that sleep mode of the computer where all the windows are put to sleep. They don't vanish. The data doesn't go away anywhere. Everything is put to a sleep mode. And when we wake up next morning, if actually all these programs are lost, then we will not remember anyone. And we will see everybody as an alien. Even though people would recognize us, they would like to relate to us in the light of our yesterday's conversation and our past conversations. We may not recognize any of them. This is what happens because of an accident or a brain stroke or something, or an accident, and a person loses his memory. He doesn't remember anyone. But no, we do remember. What does it mean? In our deep sleep states, we do not lose reality, but during deep sleep, we don't connect with that data. We are not putting that data to use because there is no connection with any objects of perception. Okay? Therefore, this Anandamaya Kosha, it's called Anandamaya Kosha because you have that feeling of bliss. So you can say 33% of Brahma Jnana happens, isn't it? Satchidananda Swarupa, you have some Ananda. So there is a lot of discussion in it. That Ananda is not real Ananda. That's a partial kind of an experience. You have, obviously, that sort of relaxes the whole system. It gives you a respite, but it doesn't give you release. That Ananda isn't born out of self-awareness and realization, which is Satchidananda Swarupa, that ineffable, blissful experience of the truth and the absolute. No, it's not that. If it were so, we will be liberated. We don't need to connect with life and struggle the next day. That doesn't happen. So it's kind of a state of Nitya Pralaya, as they say. Every day we are having a Pralaya. Then everything comes back to activity the next day when we wake up. Let's look at this sloka first. Susuptya bhani bhanam tu samadhavat manonmaya vyatirekasvat bhani susuptya anabhasanam. Susupti avhane bhanam tu samadhu atmanah anvayah Vyatirekas atma bhane susupti anabhasanam. Now you see Anvaya and Vyatireka, both they are explaining. Susuptya bhane bhanam tu. These two we have to connect with Atma bhan. Susupti, and this susupti here is not deep sleep. Susupti becomes a upalakshana. It's a symbolic representation of that ajnana. When we are in deep sleep, how do we describe it? What happens in deep sleep? During the waking in the dream states, there is what is called anyatha grahana. X is not understood as X. What is that anyatha? Anything which is anatma, anything which is other than what is tat, which is the paramartha tattva. So other than the absolute truth, you experience everything or you know everything during waking and dream states. Paramartha tattva do you get? No, that requires long sadhana. It doesn't happen in a day. But you experience very many other things. That's why Gaudapadacharya sort of equates both waking and dream state as kind of a similar experience, even though relatively during the waking state, we have a more pointed experience of our phenomenal reality surrounding us. And we have already discussed in Panchadashi that the real difference between the waking state and the dream state is that the dream state is less stable than the waking state. The waking state is much more stable, verifiable, intersubjective, all these criteria that we can employ to distinguish it from the dream state. Then what happens is that both in waking and in the dream state, so when you have anyatha grihnatah swapno, and then when you are not being tattvam ajanatah nidra, when you don't know the truth, the ultimate truth, tattvam ajanatah ajnanatah nidra. Deep sleep is essentially about not knowing the truth, not being able to know the truth. Is it absolute non-perception? There's a lot of philosophical discussion on it. If there is absolute non-perception, that means perception abhava. No. Complete no. There is a jnana vritti, a vidya vritti is there. The witness self is there. If there is no experience, then we will not be able to have any remembrance of that blissful sleep. Aham sukham aswapsam na kinchit avedisham. I don't know anything. I couldn't know anything. I had a wonderful sleep. We wouldn't be able to say this. Therefore, there is a lot of logical explanation saying that During deep sleep, we have some experience of what? Experience of not knowing anything, experience of ajnana. So there is ajnana bhana during susupti kala. Mark these words, ajnana bhana. That ignorance becomes evident to the witness self. Mind is asleep. The emotional mind is asleep. The logical analytical mind is asleep. The senses are asleep. But the witness self, that Pratyak Chaitanya, the Shakshi Chaitanya, is alive all the time. That witness self registers it through what is called avidya vritti. Vritti is vikara. Essentially, what does it mean? That you have, imagine there is a lamp, and that lamp is covered with a dark black colored handkerchief or a napkin. It is there. And therefore, during that particular period, it doesn't show anything. Is it true? No, it shows that handkerchief. From inside that bulb, if you have any sensors to take pictures, it will take picture of that particular napkin which covers it up. It's not being able to show other things, other objects of perception, because the mind is asleep. So it's covered, wrapped in ignorance, wrapped in a covering. So there is no connection between the dhyata and the dhyaya. There is no dhyaya vastu, knowable thing. But at the same time, there is ajnana bhana. Otherwise, you would not be able to remember this ajnana bhana when you wake up. When we wake up, we do say, we had a wonderful sleep. I don't know. I had a wonderful sleep. They always say, he sleeps like a wooden log. He's almost like a dead animal when he's in deep sleep. That's what happens to many of us, and that's considered very good for our health. Except there is security risk. If you are alone and you're sitting in a train station or in a very unknown place, and you have all kinds of strangers curious about what you are carrying, they could do any harm to you, and then you have all kinds of antisocials and people not in control of themselves who need help. They can harm. But generally, it's a wonderful thing to have a very good sleep. Susuptya bhane bhanam tu. Susuptya bhane means what? Abhana of susupti means ajnana abhane tu bhanam tu. When does that happen? Samadhau atmanaho anmayaha. He's now talking about a state which is different from susupti. It's called samadhi avastha. What is this new concept of samadhi? Is it what happens in the samadhi, the word which is being used here? When you have a particular vikalpa or particular vikara of your mind, something is happening, and then another vikalpa arises in your mind. One vritti was there, then there will be another vritti. In between these two vrittis, there is a interlude. And that period of interlude is like samadhi, where absolutely neither you have knowledge of anything, nor you have knowledge of that absence of any knowledge. Ajnana bhana is also not there. What is there? Of course you are there. That Shakhi Chaitanya is there. Atma is there. How do you otherwise explain that continuity? You don't even know. You're listening. There is a talk going on, and you're sitting and you're listening. It's quite possible it might happen in the satsang today itself. You're carefully, attentively listening, and suddenly for fractions of a second, or could be a couple of seconds, or 5, 10, 15 seconds in between, because you had a very busy weekend day, you're listening, and suddenly your mind enters into a strange mode of complete silence. It's not deep sleep. Of course, you might fall asleep, but there could be a samadhi kind of an avastha where you absolutely have neither knowledge of your ignorance nor knowledge of anything. It just slips your attention completely. That is what he's referring. But you are there very much. Susuptyavhane bhanam tu. There's a very subtle difference. So in that samadhi avastha, the ajnana, no, because you don't even remember that samadhi avastha. That in between there was a state where you didn't know anything and you don't even remember it. That particular interlude, at that stage, you have ajnana bhana, aham sukham aswapsam nakinchid avedisam, no. You don't even know. Somebody says, do you know you're snoring for 2 minutes? No, I haven't. But you actually have snored. Were you asleep? No, you just had entered into a deep trance. It escaped your attention. Right? So you are not in a deep sleep state, but it escaped your attention. They are referring to it. Samadho atmanaha anvayaha. The atma is very much there. You are there. You can prove it with logic. What else explains that you had prior experience, you have something which succeeds it, the preceding and the succeeding experiences are all there. And there is a continuity. You haven't gone anywhere. You here, the body is there. All these Sthula Sarira, Sukshma Sarira, everything is there. So you are there. Atma is there. But Ajnana Bhana is not there. Vyatirekasthu Atma Bhane. So even though Atma Bhana is there during the Samadhi Avastha, what is Vyatireka? That Susupti Anabhabhasanam. Susuptya Nabhabhasanam. Susuptyavhani bhanam tu samadhavat manonmayaha vyatirekastvatma bhane susuptya nabhabhasanam. Susuptehe nabhabhasanam. Susupti ka abhabhasan nahi hota hai. That means it doesn't become evident. Okay? Now, there is a bit of, because it's kind of Xerox, the quality of the print is not great. Samadho Vakshamana Lakshanayam, during the Samadhi state. Now, what is Samadhi? I will explain there. Samadhi avasthatu line purva vikalpe tu yavat anyasya na udayaha. There is one particular process which comes to an end. The other one has an erasure. So, nirvikalpa chaitanyam spastam tavad vibhasate. Nirvikalpa chaitanya. That consciousness is there. Now, interestingly, in the nirvikalpa samadhi also, the nirudha avastha, the yoga sutra that talk about. In the sampragyanta samadhi, the awareness of the self is there in some. But in the asampragyanta samadhi or niruddha samadhi, we have discussed that we were doing the Madhusudana's gloss, Gudartha Deepika, the 6th chapter. We had a lot of discussion, isn't it? Savitarka, Nirvitarka, Savichara, Nirvichara, different stages of dhyana. And in the asampragyanta or the niruddha samadhi, the consciousness that still blossoms, that luminosity there. And then there is nothing else. That consciousness is there. But that you are meditating, that is not there with you. You go beyond that. But the consciousness continues to flicker. It's all the time there. So, samadho bhakshamana lakshanayam samadhi avasthayam susuptya bhane. Susupti abhane, that I had a good sleep, I didn't know anything. You don't have that. Ajnana bhana. Tu sabdo avadharane. Tu means avadharane means nishchayarthe. Atmana eva bhanam. Only atmana bhana means puranam. Satta and spurti. In Vedanta, these two words are very important. One is satta. It exists. Right? That is called ajnana is also, avarana is also two kinds in Vedanta. Asatva padaka and abhana padaka. One sort of prevents the bhana of something, spuranam something. And asatva means that something covers its very existence. It exists, it also becomes evident. There is kampana, there is spurana. So he's saying, Atmana eva bhanam spuranam yad asti sa atmano anvayaha. That is anupriti. Atma is there. It continues to exist. Atma bhane sati. When Atma bhana happens, Atmana spurto satyam. Sati Saptami. So the spurti, that that flickers. Okay, it's like this, it blips the consciousness. Somebody told me that how Chaitanya is superior to anything which is jada. Somebody was, some writer once, long back. They said, look, you may have a big garden and beautiful flowers, but there could be a very tiny, small dragonfly or a butterfly, but it'll catch your attention. Why? Because it has that life force. It has that spurana, it has that energy, the light of his consciousness. That difference. It doesn't mean that the plans are unconscious, anything. Consciousness is all pervading. But just to emphasize that point. So whenever there is any satta, it will also have spurana in that sense. Spurto satyam. Susupti anavabhasanam in the samadhi state. Atma ka spurti hai, but the ajnana, aham sukham aswapsam na kinchid avedisam, this kind of abhana of ajnana, that is not there. Susupti anvabhasanam, susupti upalakshitasya, susupti se upalakshit, any whatever is kind of indirectly referred to with the word susupti. What is that? Ajnanasya apratitehe eva. That ajnana is not evident during the samadhi avastha because there is only pure consciousness. Vyatirekaha tasya iti. Kasya vyatireka? Susuptehe vyatirekaha. Susupti doesn't continue to be evident in the samadhi. Atma continues to be evident. That is anvaya, and this is vyatireka. Atra ayam prayogaha. This is how we are going to make the argument. What is that? Pratyak atma annamayadibhyo vidyate. So this is the printing error. So pratyak atma, that pratyak chaitanya pratyak atma is it's like ghatakasha and mahakasha. That grand one universal consciousness, which is Param Brahman. It pervades all of us, and if we try to recognize, isolate, or individuate in philosophical language, individuate that universal consciousness within the parameters of our body-mind framework, we call it Pratyagatma. It's Atma only, like you said, Ghatakasha. So what is he saying? Pratyagatma annamayadibhyo vidyate. This Atma is different from Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, and also Anandamaya Kosha. Tesu parasparam vyavartamaneshu api. They are different from each other. Annamaya Kosha is different from Pranamaya Kosha, and Pranamaya Kosha is different from Manomaya Kosha and Vijnanamaya Kosha, and vice versa. We have already discussed that. Parasparam vyavartyamaneshu api swayam avyavritatvat. It's like, as I have told you earlier, so you have 5 batches of workers in an IT project, and there is a manager of these all teams. He is a constant. Others are changing. Atma is a constant. All these courses are changing. Yadi esu vyavartamaneshu api na vyavartate tattebhyo vidyate. These are different from each other. They are not universally concomitant with each other. But this one is all the time there, therefore it is different from them. It is not similar to them. They have a certain domain of their importance. What is the example we had given in the last class? The Samanta Raja and the Chakravartin, or the king and the emperor. You have these small fiduciary or feudatory kings. They had Jamindari system in Bengal, Orissa, parts of Uttar Pradesh. These are feudatory kings, Samanta Rajas. There is a king who collects. You collect taxes, you are referred to as Raja in your territorial fiefdom. And then beyond that, you can't go. He goes everywhere. That is Atma. Therefore, he is different from all of us. Jatha kusumebhyaha sutram. So you have Sutri Manigana, you have a lot of flowers, then you have a garland. Now, that particular thread pervades through all the flowers and is different from the flowers. It holds the flowers. Similarly, this Atma is different from these Panchakoshas. Kusumebhya sutram yathava khandadi vyaktibhyo gattvamiti. What is khanda go, munda go? So khanda means, just imagine, there's a cow. It has a broken horn. You say khanda go. So you have certain descriptive filters for isolating one cow from another. One is black, the other one is brown, the other one is white. Gotva is there in all of them. Now you'll be tempted to trap me like a nyayayika. He says, oh, I'm so happy you're using my language. So Atma is like a jati? No. Atma is not a universal like jati in nyaya. One may be tempted to say that because you are saying, because the jati stays in vyakti, right? But the Atma doesn't stay in us. Bhagavan clarifies that in Bhagavad Gita. We are actually kind of appendages on that universal consciousness. We are appearing as different beings. And that Atma is there. Bhagavan says, they are all in me, I'm not in them. And he says, they are neither in me nor I'm in them. And what is the relationship? Bhagavan clarifies. Like atmosphere in the sky. The sky pervades the atmosphere. What is the relationship? Is the sky trapped in atmosphere? Can you say the sky is trapped in different human beings that we are? No. So it's not jati in that sense. It's not a class thing. The jati thing is beautifully refuted in Khandana Khandahadya. No. That word itself cannot be proved to be a valid category. There's a lot of logical argumentation in Advaita Vedanta. So, we have already finished then. We'll graduate to the next one. So, then Atma is different from the Panchakosas. Okay, so we have crossed another hurdle. As students of Vedanta, we are graduating to more refined levels of meditation on what is that Atma Tattva. And we are super excited. So, the professor, the teacher, the acharya will hold our hands and draw our attention to something more interesting, more challenging at the same time. And what is that? He is going to explain to us how, even though we all appear as different individual beings with a body-mind complex of our own, we have some subjectivity, some names, some forms, some thoughts, papa, punya, and all that. Otherwise, Shastra anarthakya prashangat. If these distinctions are completely useless, then there will be no sadhana. Everybody is liberated. Everybody is Atma. There has to be some explanation that all of us are actually, now Shastra would say that all of you are actually Suddha Buddha Mukta Svabhava. All of you are Jiva Brahmaiva Napara. No doubt about it. Why am I in pain? And that's because of your mind. That's because of loads and loads of ignorance, misunderstanding, so to say, not ignorance, wrong perception, wrong understanding in which we are trapped, as a result of which we have a habit of doing and thinking about the reality in a certain way, and therefore we have no respite, no escape. Otherwise, things are very easy. Now let's look at it, what he's trying to say. Anya Vetireka Kosha Panchakad Viviktasya Atmanaha. You do the Anya Vetireka. These are logical tool. There's a particular way of thinking, analysis. So what pervades all is Nitya. What is there in certain limited domains is to be discarded. Why? It doesn't survive the test of Nityatva everywhere. It is present. Happiness is present when you're having ice cream. And then if you have a lot of it, you have a sore throat. And then you cannot speak. You have cold or you catch cold. You may have fever. All these are very transient, ephemeral, very temporary, but they don't hold any promise of happiness beyond a few seconds and beyond a few specific experiences. And they cannot be compared with Atma. Atma is Karana Nirapeksha. It gives you happiness. All these are sapeksha. These are relative experiences of what you call happiness, which we are not actually experiencing happiness. If so, why do we repent many of our experiences of happiness? Many things at one point of time which we celebrated, which we enjoyed, we discard them after some time. We get bored with the same thing. Even the child knows it so well. The child gets bored with the doll after some time, isn't it? It wants to do something else. The mind keeps jumping around. So the professor is taking us forward. He says, Anvaya Vetikabhyam Kosha Panchakad Viviktasya Atmanaha. The Atma is now different from this Panchakosas done. Brahma Praptir Bhavati iti Uktam. Atma, you know, then you have Brahma Prapti. So what is the point of reading any further? Let's close Panchadasi. Tad Pratipadikam Angusta Matraha Purusho Antaratma Kathopanishad. It's very subtle. Angusta Matra Purusha is compared with your thumb and the whole body. No. Is it a tiny thing? Is that talking about a physical element in our whole anatomy or the whole biological system? No, no, no. These, I tell you, we have no other way to talk about Atma. So the Acharyas keep saying this, that Adhyaropa Avavadabhyam Nisprapancham Prapanchate. We don't know how to talk about the Nisprapancham Brahma. In order to be able to talk about it, we will do some Adhyaropa, some superimposition. Then sublation, then we'll remove it, Apavada. We'll give you one hypothesis, then reject that hypothesis from a higher level of consciousness. I was reading some interesting commentary on the writing of the great magnum opus Savitri by Sri Aurobindo. He went on writing, and there's still a lot of research as to what was the original line, because he has rewritten many versions of the same thing over 3 decades, and then he picked up 4 or 5 of his students, great scholars, who started editing it, like Amal Kiran, K.D. Setna, and Nirad Boran, and then there was one Mukherjee, I'm forgetting his name, and there were Nolinikant, you know. So there were this Dasgupta, I suppose. There were 4 or 5 of this, Nalinda, and all those 4 or 5 extremely intelligent, bright, and Sishyas of Sri Aurobindo started editing it, put them together with his guidance. And then there were several versions. And Sri Aurobindo Swami writes that I write something about a particular truth. There is nothing funny about it. I was not writing poetry. When I ascend to a point of consciousness and there is a truth, kind of descending to me, I just capture that truth in words. When I go to a high level of consciousness and I'm writing about the same thing, I abandon it, I write something else. It struck me when I was reading that autobiographical note on how he rewrote Savitri several times. This is exactly the Vedantic process. Adhyaropa Avavadabhyam Nisprapancham Prapanchate. That is the spiritual experience. It's very mystical because there is an element of passivity. You're not controlling all these perceptions. These things unfold right in front of your consciousness as you ascend to subtler planes. And at the subtlest plane, there'll be nothing. There'll be pure consciousness, which is non-dualistic. You would not be different from that conception. There'll be no conception. There'll be no vikara, no vritti. There'll be only pure luminosity at the end of the day. And when you are there, you are not there as you. Aham Brahmasmi, Aham will not be there and Asmi will not be there. There'll be only that pure luminosity, nameless, formless, pure truth, existence, bliss, whatever way you want to describe it. That is for lesser humans, the students, all of us. But that experience is supreme. Now here he is saying, Angusta Matraha Purushantara Atma. When I mention this, lest there is any kind of confusion in your minds, whether he's talking about a biological part of our body, no. Angusta Matraha Purusho Antaratma, the Antaryami, which is there in all of us, is very subtle. Ityadikam tam vidyan Sukram Amrutam Kathopanishad. Iti antam kathasrutim arthataha patati. So he takes these couple of sentences from the Kathopanishad, and there are several other Upanishads. He's now bringing those Upanishadic insightful statements into the discussion in order to help us graduate to that inner appreciation of what is that Jiva Brahma Aikya. What is the code word through which we reach there? What is that particular key? The password? The password is Tattvamasi. You are that. Thou art that. How can you be that? How can I be that? That is Ishvara, God. So you are God. I'm God. I can do anything. There'll be confusion. I am a Alpagya. Bhagavan is Sarvagya. I am Kinchitgya. I know a little. He's Sarvagya. Aham Sankuchita Sthitivan. I am here, couple of square feet on which I'm standing. And he is Sarva Vidyaman. He is everywhere, omnipresent. And then he's omnipotent. And Aham Alpa Saktiman. I have a very tiny bit of energy. If you don't eat for 3-4 days, you'll be falling flat on the bed. You won't be able to move. Of course, I mean, during Navratras, all of us do fasts. But then these are all for limited periods, isn't it? There's the limitations to whatever we can claim as we are capable of, or we are experiencing, or we are having it. God is all-pervading, is all-powerful. No comparison. Why should Shastra say, Tattvamasi, you are that? There must be some other twist to it. Obviously, they are not referring to our minds, they are not referring to our bodies, they are not referring to our emotional self or the Anandamaya Kosha. There's something referring to something beyond all this, which is the pure consciousness. Let's get into that. How do you know then what is that Atma, this Panchakoshat Bhinnaha is different from Panchakoshati-taha Avastatraya Shakshi? What is that Atma? He is giving you this verse number 42. What is it? Yatha munja dise keva matma yuktya samudritaha sarira tritiya dhirehi param brahmeva jayate. You might be asking questions as to how am I reading it, because it's only ka, I'm saying kai, because these are print errors because of the faulty photocopy. Yatha munjadi munja isika evam atma yuktya samudritaha. What is munja and what is ishika? You have different kinds of varieties of grass. The munja is one variety of grass. And there are layers. And then in between, you will have a very white thread-like, very fibrous, very soft, very delicate. It is there in between. And if you want to take that isika out of it, you have to really pay a lot of attention, and your eyesight must be good, and you must be a very careful person, meticulous and careful. So use your fingers to rip apart and remove, peel it off, layer by layer, in order to get that tiny, soft thread-like substance, which is it's like in the middle of it. It's a tortuous process. Similarly, he uses the word yuktya. Atma is not a physical substance. So you're not going to do a surgery to take the Atma out of the Annamaya Kosha. No, that's not the purpose. Therefore, he's saying, Yatha Munja, that is the Drishtanta. That's an example. The way you take out the isika from the munja grass, which is the inner core of it, through a lot of meticulous effort, same way, yuktva samudritaha, the Atma has to be extracted, abstracted from layers of identity in which it is trapped. This is all Panchakoshas, Annamaya Kosha and Pranamaya Kosha and Manomaya Kosha and Vijnanamaya Kosha, and finally the Anandamaya Kosha, the Karana Sarira. These are these 5 koshas and three sariras, sthula, sukshma, and karana. Sarira tritiyat. These three bodies, sthula, sukshma, and the karana sarira, abandon them. What do you find? Atma. Who can find? Dhirehi, very quiet. Dhira can mean somebody who has a lot of patience. Dhira also can mean Dhyam Rati iti or Dhyam Rat Nigrinati iti. Some people also say like that. Or the one who relishes in intellect, as they say, life of mind, somebody who is a very contemplative person, dhiraha, or somebody who is very patient. Of course, if you are very contemplative, you'll slowly develop a lot of patience, born out of viveka, proper vichara. So he's saying, sarira tridaya dhirehi kaschit dhiraha. All the time, there is a lot of, like for example, there's a very striking similarity between the way the early Greek philosophers and Indian philosophers thought about reality. If you look at Aristotle, he also distinguishes between life of activities and life of contemplation, and he privileges a life of contemplation over a life of activities. So he says, there is something called theoretica and there is something called practica, and he privileges theoretica over practica. How do I put it? You have an engineer and then you have a professor of engineering. The engineer, of course, will do a few inventions. He would be in the workshop. He will do a lot of things. He's a doer. Then the professor who is dealing with, some of you are professors, so you are in the contemplative mode. Aristotle thought that is superior because you are grasping more of reality at a very subtle level. Dhira is somebody like that. He's a contemplative person. Dhire he, and then he's able to do this analytical extraction or abstraction of the self from layers of existence, layers of names and forms in which it is hidden, it is trapped. Okay, it is encased. So Param Brahmeva Jayate, that Param Brahma, which is hidden in all these names and forms, all faulty presuppositions about who we are, we have to remove these false presuppositions to recover our pure self. The pure self is hidden. Okay? And then let's look at the commentary. Interesting. Yatha iti. Yatha yena prakarena, the way, munja etan namaka trina visheshat. He's saying what is munja? There is a name called munja and there is a trina vishesha, a certain specific type of grass. Ishika garvastam komalam trinam. That is garvastha. Inside it, there is a canal-like thing. The inner core of that particular grass is a white line or thread-like substance. Yuktya vahir avarakattvena sthitanam sthulapatranam vibhajana lakshana upayena samadhriyate. How do you take this out? You have these avarakas, which are covering it. And these avaraka layers, right? These are peels and you peel them off. Bahir avarakattvena sthitanam sthula patranam, which are more physically, you can touch them, you can feel them, remove them. Then you get that subtle thread which is in between. Vibhajana lakshana upayena, you do vibhajana, remove them. Upayena samadhriyate, you can recover that ishika. Evam atma pi drashtantika. Now come to the context. What is also atma? How do you do it? With your fingers and eyes and attention? No, sir. Yuktya, with thoughtful contemplation. So, it's good to be rational, to be rational? No. Yuktya here we have to understand. Tarka apratisthanat. There is a discussion in Vedanta. Logic on its own cannot solve any of your problems. There's a beautiful joke which Osho Rajneesh used to make. A little out of context, but I love that joke. You know what he used to say? Once what happened was a person's father uh, got drowned while he was taking a bath. I mean, one fisherman had gone out fishing. He found a corpse, a dead body of a human being. That dead body got caught in his net. He didn't know what to do. He said, there is a wonderful consultant who had long years of experience in Boston Consulting or Ernst& Young or whatever, McKinsey. Why don't you go and talk to him? He's retired. He's a smart guy. He goes to him. He's a very old retired guy was sitting and said, okay, I have pity on you. Why don't you deposit $100, small amount? This is token amount, $100. He immediately deposits, fills that form, and he says, yeah, what's the problem? He says, I found a dead body, what to do with it? And he looks at him and he says, okay, do one thing. Technically speaking, it's essentially a seller's market, because you're the only guy who is the dead body of whosoever is the son or family member of this person who got drowned. It's a seller's market because you are there's a monopoly situation. Whatever price you demand, he has to give, because he won't find this dead body of his father or elder brother or uncle anywhere else. You are the only shop in which he can buy this. Therefore, relax. You have paid the $100. Yes, sir. Go home. He happily goes home. After some time, the son of the person who got drowned got the news that his father has gone drowned in water. Then he says, what to do? He goes and says, give me my father's body that you found, who got caught in your net. He says, yeah, give me $10,000. He said, what? He said, yeah, that's what you have to give me. One American consultant has told me, he's a very saintly consultant, charged me only $100, but then minimum you have to give me $10,000. This is a seller's market, monopoly situation. This guy was in tears and he was confused as to what is he going to do with my father's body. Then he says, what to do? Somebody says, why don't you go back to the same consultant? They'll give you some advice. He goes to the same person. And this person says, look here, what is the problem? Have you filled the application form? Yes, sir, I have got the registration. $100 you have paid? Yes. So what's the problem? He says, my father has got caught in the net of a fisherman and is demanding $10,000. He says, it's stupid. This is a buyer's market situation. Because if there's any buyer who wants to buy the corpse, it's the only customer is you. Either you buy it, or if you don't buy it, he doesn't know what to do with it. Anyway, police will catch up with them. You can go to the police and make a complaint. So, you can fix him. Maybe you can accuse him of homicide or something. So you have paid your $100? Yes, sir. Go home, relax. Then that fellow goes. And then he says, essentially, that logic is a prostitute, doesn't solve any problem. In Advaita Vedanta, the acharyas all the time emphasize on tarka, but at the same time, they warn us about the dangers of tarka. The tarka should be in the interest of exploring the inside in the apparently interesting statements of the Upanishads. What is the hidden meaning of it? In order to explore it, you should use your logic, right? So there are different ways. A lot of people say hermeneutics we didn't have. Actually, at the end of the day, they were the first linguist. Nobody would admit, but it was Panini, isn't it? Saussure, who wrote so much. This guy was a professor of Sanskrit in Switzerland all his life. And then he wrote about all these theories. And nobody talks about Saussure having ever borrowed anything from Sanskrit, even though that could be a fact. But Panini, nobody admits that he is in fact the first guy to talk about structure of language. Of course, linguistics has traveled a lot in the West after that. Now, if you talk about this particular thing is very, very interesting, that in our tradition, they don't give too much of importance to only dry logic. They say that there are certain inner secrets hidden in the Upanishadic statements, and therefore your logic should be in the interest of unraveling the secret. How do you do it? By properly understanding the text. What are the science of interpreting the text is called hermeneutics. So, in Indian universities, even me and all, we study what are the problems of interpretation in philosophy and social science. But nobody taught us that actually Indians had a hermeneutic tradition, how to decipher the meaning. There's a lot of discussion in it, in Mimamsa Darshan and Indian philosophical traditions. There is Padanvaya and there is Vakyanvaya. There are different theories of meaning. We study theories of meaning in the Western philosophy, but nobody pays any attention to theories of meaning that we have in Indian philosophy as well. In the literary theories, there's a lot of works on different literary constructions and how to deduce the meaning. There is something called, it's very interesting. The interesting thing is that we have, how do you go to that meaning? They say that you do upakrama upasanghara. What is the beginning and what is the end? Abhyasa. Abhyasa is repetitively one thing is said. It was there in the beginning, it is again mentioned in the upasarga, upakrama, upasanghara, babhyasa, apurvata, and phalam is said for the first time. It's new, apurvata. And then phalam, there is some result. It's meaningful. It's not a meaning, nirarthaka statement. And then upapatti, there's some logic in it. And then these are the lingani tatparya nirnaye. So these are the 6 types of lingas, suchakas. They are signs which you can use to deduce or explore the meaning of a Vedic text. Tattvamasi is there now. There's several times, is he talking about the physical body? He's talking about the ego self. What is he talking about? You have to look at that particular context in which this has been discussed. Okay, we have hit the timeline. So I don't want to rush through it. We're going to meet again tomorrow. So we'll take it forward from there. Let's do the Santi mantras. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Tat Sat. Okay, so do you have any questions? Anyone? The class is over, but anybody has any questions?
Swamiji, Swamiji, I put it in the chat
Yeah.
box, but I wanted to repeat that. I just said in deep sleep, it's experience of absence. And in samadhi, I just said what exactly we experience. Is it
Yeah.
again a kind of absence? As you said, luminosity. That luminosity is slightly, I'm not able to grasp what exactly. It's a kind of light that we see. What
No, no,
exactly we see in the samadhi?
no, not in that way. Okay. So Samadhi, there are different ways in which you can look at Samadhi. Samadhi here is being used in a specific context to indicate what is that intermittent period where you are neither aware of ajnana. Absolute non-perception is not there in deep sleep. If you say there was absolute non-perception, how do you say that? Mind, your logical, analytical mind, emotional mind, they were not non-existence. They were in sleep mode. They were in Karanavastha. They were in Vijavastha, and they will wake up again. So there is not absolute non-perception. There is, in fact, but there is no perception of any objects of experience. But that you don't know anything, that ajnana, that not knowing anything, you will not be able to express because you are in a sleep. But when you wake up, through your Shakhi Chaitanya, through your witness self, that is experienced, and that you are remembering in a waking state. In Samadhi Avastha, to keep it very simple, you don't even remember that you are for so many seconds in a state of not knowing anything. What is common to both? Atma is there in both these states, Sushupti and Samadhi Avastha. In Susupti Avastha, there is experience of not knowing. Avidya bhana is there. Therefore, when you wake up from deep sleep, you say, I had a wonderful sleep, I don't know anything. I didn't know anything, I had a wonderful sleep. In Samadhi Avastha, it's that self is there. But even this Ajnana Bhana, Avidya Bhana is not there. Because it is not a sleep mode. It is not a sleep mode. It is the consciousness is very much there, but the consciousness is not knowing anything, including that is not knowing anything. That kind of a thing. We'll take it further, and I will try to elaborate a little more on this. But very briefly, you try to look at Samadhi the way it's mentioned here is that interlude period between two Vikalpas. Another has not arisen, and one particular meditation has come to an end. We'll take it forward tomorrow. Okay? So,
Okay.
see you.
Okay. Pranam, sir.
Wow.